Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vool, and in this video we're looking at an awesome tool set that's hidden within Blender. So I only found this tool set by accident the other day, and I've been tinkering around with it and there seems some great stuff in here. Now you do need to activate this, so go to Edit and Preferences, you're going to need to go to Get Extensions and type in Edit Mesh. And then you're going to have Edit Mesh Tools where you're going to need to click Install. I've already installed it obviously, so I haven't got that there. Once you've done that, go to your add-ons, once again Edit Mesh Tools, make sure that's clicked on and either save preferences, or if you've got auto save preferences, it's going to be working. Now this is going to be found in your end panel where you go to the edit menu, but importantly you need to be in edit mode, bring up the edit menu, and then you've got mesh tools, and you'll see you get a range of vertex tools, edge tools, face tools, and utility tools. There's quite a lot in here. Now I'm going to do a really quick overview of these, just jumping through them so you can see the basics of what they do, but as I say, I only found this the other day, so I've been tinkering around with these different tools. So, first one, Vertex Chamfer. So if we click on this, we get a Vertex Chamfer where we can do our distance. Now in many ways, if I just come out of this, this is very similar to just holding Control Shift and B, and then you get a bevel. But this importantly has some different options. You get to choose the distance, so if we go all the way there, it's done as a proportion or relative. If we turn that off, then it actually becomes a specific distance. So for example, that is one of whatever my units are. In this I use Blender units, but this could be meters. The other thing that's really cool is we have this option to get rid of the remove, and then we just get some cuts at whatever distance we picked. But we also have an option to displace this, either further out, or we can make this go further in, which is really cool. And as normal, you can do multiple vertices at the same time, all doing the same thing, and it keeps the last settings. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be some interesting uses for this. That's quite cool. Next, we've got the option to extrude vertices, and once again, very similar to what we'd normally be able to do. In fact, I think this might be identical to just hitting E and extruding out that way. But it does mean that you don't have to remember all of your shortcuts. And just some quick notes on this, you can pick how this moves, so you can choose what your movement is on each of the axes, and you can do some cool proportional editing where this actually moves the object out with it. Now, what I really like for this is if you're going to do that, then if you go into edge mode and do something like those edges, Control and E, and then subdivide them, and you up the number of cuts. If we go back to vertex mode and we're going to extrude the vertex, move that there, click proportional editing, you can do some really cool effects. I quite like this one with the sharp, and you can affect the proportional size for that and how this is going to move around. You can also have that go further in the Z-axis, things like that. It could be quite interesting for making like the spikes on the corner of armor and things like that. So I think that's quite a useful one as well. Got some utility there. Then we've got, once in vertex mode, random vertices. Effectively, that is going to select vertices at random, but I believe you need to have a vertex group set up for this for that to work. So hopefully you understand how to do that. There are other ways of doing this. I quite like, sorry, I think we need to click off of this, select and select random as an option for that, and you get a random selection and you can pick your ratio. I've got a feeling it will do exactly the same thing as that. And then finally we get bevel vertices, which if we do that, we can bevel our vertices. This again looks exactly the same as Control Shift and B, which I mentioned earlier, but if you don't like remembering all of your shortcuts, it's nice that you've got that option there. Next one, edge tools. And this first one is actually my favorite. I think this is going to be really cool. In fact, actually, I will show this on the object here. So if you offset edges, we get, well, an edge. And it's just been offset, and we can change how much that's been offset by. We can go in or out. But what's really cool is we can change the angle. So this is now a 45-degree offset. It's gone in that direction. And you can see if I move the width, how that's working. So I think this is really, really fun. But what I really like about this, if you've got something, let's go with a plane, and then we just delete out one of the vertices, actually. Let's just do something like that. No, actually, let's just do an edge. So we'll just X and delete out that edge. If we A and offset the edges, we get a load of edges, and then we can just Shift and R to do that again and again. And from there, if we come into object mode, this gives us a really, really quick and easy way, if you see my recent videos on ND, to come in and create some pipes. So we could very easily just do, let's say, a path smooth there. Let's go to our modifier, up that, and maybe make that more rounded. And then we can just bring in our pipes, and then we've got a load of pipes that are all next to each other. Perfect. Let's just add that up to 16. So we get all of these pipes being created. I think that's got some really cool utility as well. And God, it's annoying where you have some faces and you're trying to make these work in a different way. So each time they get a little bit bigger in a uniform way. So this is a massive time saver. Really, really happy with that. I think of all of the tools, that one is my favorite. Next, we have fillet edges. For this, we're going to need a two-dimensional object like a plane. Let's go into edge mode, fillet edges, and you can see this has just rounded our corners, which is really cool. We can change the distance of this, and we can change the number of corners, which is great. There is a radius button. Can't work out what that does. I think it's just changing the way that this is measured, either on radius or distance. And then you've got the option of doing outside, which sort of makes these Mickey Mouse ears things, or we can flip them. Now that I can see being useful to create some quite nice shapes. So there we go. So that's that one. I don't think this is totally crazy. Again, if we just go into vertex mode, we could do this with a bevel, so Control Shift and B to bevel these around, but it's another set of options that we've got there, so useful to have. Next one we've got is edge roundify. Again, I think there's some uses for this. So for example, normally if I had an object, I might want to bevel this here, let's say, and do a bevel there to make this rounded. But what if we knew that these edge lengths here, I'll come back to edge lengths, I think it was the second favourite of all of my things here, but say we know that these edges are exactly the length we want, but we still want this rounded. If we come here and select edge roundify, it creates, well, some rounded edges, and we can up the segments to make this nice and rounded. Let's go to 32. So we've got those. Again, we can flip these, but annoyingly, if we do that, this doesn't break up the face. So I'm not sure how useful that is. Just quickly look at that again and turn that off. Also, you've got invert, which seems to do exactly the same thing. We can also remove the edges that we've got, which is quite useful because then we can go into edge mode and just hit F to get this all filled in. And again, there doesn't seem to be an option, annoyingly, where we just get this filled in by itself. For example, edge roundify, I thought connecting arcs might do it, but that just puts in a cross. Not really sure about that. Again, I need to experiment with these some more, but we've also got some really cool things where we can offset these and have them in different locations. I think my favorite one is that we can rotate these and have them at a different angle, something like that. So I think that's quite cool. And finally, we can also change how elliptical they are to change the rounding on them. Again, I think there's some simple uses for this where you've got a beveled end, but you know the distance you want. You just want to add a semicircle on the end, and it's going to be a lot quicker than adding in a circle and getting it to that position. So again, nice options. Next, we've got my second favorite, which is the set edge length. Now, this looks like it's not doing anything because I can change my target length, let's say to 1, and it hasn't done anything until you click OK. And then it comes here for some reason, and now you can just make it work. I'm not sure why they didn't just make it work from the start, but there we go, it is what it is. But I think that's incredibly handy to be able to set a length of an edge to a specific distance. For example, if I wanted to put this to 3 and click OK, and it works from the middle, or if we just undo this, and I do find this slightly weird as a way to picture it, if we set edge length and turn this to 3 again, instead of it being proportional from the middle, we can change it to being clockwise or counterclockwise. And I guess the question is, clockwise from where? Originally I was like, oh, looking down, clockwise, it goes in this direction, but then it didn't. So in this instance, it seems to be from the side, so from here. So if I set edge length again to 3 and set it to work in a clockwise direction and click OK, it's gone that way. So that's the vertex you'd come to first if you started at 12 o'clock and went round. And if I do it the other way, so if I do set edge length again and change that to 3 and then go to counterclockwise, it will go the other way. And yeah, from this side, it does the same thing and goes that way. So I think it's from a side-on point of view. The other bit that I really like about this, let's just do set edge length, and I'm going to put this to 3 again and then do it from the center, is we have another option. If we select multiple edges and set edge length, we can, instead of doing it manually, we can do it on existing edges. And for example, I could say I want to match it to the shortest one. Let's click OK, and then it's matched it to the shortest one. Or we could do it to longest. I think to demonstrate that, I'll just undo this, set edge length, and then longest, and then click OK. Or we can just set it to, where was it? Active. That's really nice. So in this instance, my active is blue. And it does work if you've got multiple edges. Let's just do both of them, and then set that to manual and 3. It does work on both at the same time. So I'm pretty sure I'll find some uses for that. Next, again, something which needs a plane. We've got this edges floor plan, and if we click that, this does this quite cool thing of just making walls. So we can change the height of our wall, so we can make it taller or less tall, and we can change the width as well. Rim only makes this hollow on the inside, which could be quite cool for if we rotated this around something like guttering, maybe, not sure about that. And then we've got some other options here. For example, net edge, which just does the edges. Now, this net edge is quite interesting, but I don't think it's where it needs to be yet. If I just use the knife tool and do something like that, and then there, and then we'll do, I don't know, imagine we've got another edge here, and this is a corridor, so we'll go with something like that. And maybe this is 2 rooms, so we'll do one more here. I'm going to hit Shift to go to the center point of each of these points. So we've got this, and we hit our edges floor plan. If we've got this as net edges, but we don't click remove engons, we sort of start to get the idea that this could be individual rooms, but it's a bit messed up because this one creates a double face, and also the solidify sort of works here, but it creates some uneven thickness. I really wish there was an even thickness here, and that wall offset doesn't seem to really fix this. So this one looks like it has a lot of potential, but it kind of isn't finished yet from what I can tell, so I'm not sure how I'd use that. Then we have extrude edges. Again, nothing particularly surprising here. It's just an extrude function. We could do that with E if we wanted to, but it's again there if you don't know the shortcut. And finally, we've got bevel edges, which, well, bevels our edges. And again, this is exactly the same as far as I can tell as just pressing Control and B and beveling. But again, it gives you an option to click instead of having to remember the keyboard shortcut. Now that I think about it, maybe if you're using something like a graphics tablet, this is a really useful setup. Okay, face tools. So, face inset fillet is quite cool. It's just the same as pressing I to inset faces. In fact, actually, we've got an inset faces option here, which again looks exactly the same as just pressing I, so in case you forget it. But instead, when we do this, this is going to, if I just inset a bit more, create a rounded corner on each of them, and we can change the distance on these corners and the number of sides. So the same as doing an inset and then beveling each of these, though I will say it doesn't create this awful mess. So again, there's a use for this. It is going to make life easier. Next one, we've got cut faces. Now, if I do this, this looks exactly the same, if we do that, as pressing Control and R and doing an edge loop. But the difference here is that we can actually just select certain faces to cut. So we get to select which ones we want to cut. And we could do things like here and then cut the faces, and we get this. And we could up the number here. So this could be very useful in combination with that vertex tool I showed earlier, where we extrude that vertex and put on proportional editing. So again, there's options here. I think that's quite nice, and we get to control which ones we want to have cut. And we can change the number of cuts as we normally would. There are also some funky options here. For example, if we do that again and we change that from straight cut to fan, we get this sort of cool fanning out to the opposite corners. From the ones that were selected, if you remember, we had these selected, so it goes to the outer corners. Again, might be useful, not totally sure. Oh, that is some crazy stuff. Yeah, I think this needs experimenting with, let's put it that way. But it's there, really nice. Then we've got our multi-extrude. Now, this is just like an extrusion, except for, look at all these options that we've got of offset and things like this. I mean, this is just crazy. So in this instance, we're just going to want to control how far we're going up in the Z, though we could do it off to the side. I'm going to put that back to 0. But what's really cool is we've got a scale here. So I'm going to do, I think, that. Let's go with there. And we've got a repeat, so we can have more and more of them. And it scales, because this is a proportional scale, not an amount, each time, and creates this quite cool curving shape. or we could have it scaling in and creating a quite cool curving shape. Yeah, not sure. We've also got our ability to rotate, so we could start doing some twisty shapes, something like that. So again, a lot of potential fun here. Not sure what the difference between rotation on the Z and N rotation on the Z is. Again, needs some experimenting with, I think, but pretty nice. I think we can see some options for that too. Split solidify just copies that face and then solidifies it a little bit further up. We can change the distance that it's been solidified, so we can have it higher or lower. We can change the thickness of our object. We can have the distance that's being measured based on the face or the vertex, which makes a little bit of a difference. And importantly, we've got this delete original face, which is kind of cool maybe if you're making, I don't know, a box, though maybe you'd want that cut out. But we can keep that original face there, which is useful. And this will do it on multiple faces at the same time. So if we just split and solidify those faces, we get one on all of the different sides. And I should mention we do have a random as well. Whoa. Okay, that's a bit crazy. So potentially some use there. Maybe if you're doing something really crazy, let's just Control and E and subdivide that like several times. And you wanted something that looked like some, I don't know, crazy magical hallway. If we do that split solidify at random, we get all of these different bits at different distances and heights. So yeah, possibly some potential there. I wish it had a minimum as there was a little bit of overlap there. Then we have face shape. This one's really odd. You pick an option and you get things like open inset, and you can control how wide the inset is or how high it is, or you can do it with another base and then you control that second height or have it going in. Or there's some ones that don't necessarily seem to be doing much here, or just a spike. That's fairly cool. Again, actually, if we Control and E and subdivide this a couple of times and then do that, so face shape, we get a number of spikes, which could be useful. I'm going to be honest, normally when I do something like this, I use hard ops to do it, so it's nice to have a free option there. We've got insert faces. It's exactly the same as it normally is, just the same as hitting I as far as I can tell. I can't see any real difference there. And then we've got extrude individual faces, where we can extrude all of our faces outwards. Again, that seems to be an option we have if you press Alt and E, and then you've got your different extrude options. We can extrude individual faces as well. But again, saves you some time remembering shortcuts. And then we've got our utility tools, and we've got options like subdivide. So for example, I could subdivide this up. Again, quite nice not having to right click and then go to subdivide, or go to edge and then subdivide. That you could just have it there on the side, so kind of fun. We've got merge by distance. Again, we've got other options to merge by distance. If I don't know, let's do Control and R and bring a load of edges there. We can start merging these by distance. So merge by distance, and you drag up until they get to the point where they join. Again, we've got that already. You can hit M and then by distance. So this is doing exactly the same option, but it's there. We also have limited dissolve. If we just A and then hit that, we will dissolve anything that's below 5 degrees, which is handy. Again, we can just do that with A, X, and then limited dissolve. And again, it stops us having to remember some shortcuts. We've got flip normals. If I select this face and flip the normals are now the wrong way round. If I just come up here so we can see our face orientation. I've set my face orientation so it's yellow when it's the wrong way round. Sometimes when we do booleans, it's very easy to get flipped faces, so it's quite nice just to be able to click that and then click flip normals. Again, this is nothing different to Alt and N, and we've got an option for flip, but once again, it stops us having to remember things. We can triangulate faces to turn them into triangles, and then we've got triangles to quads to turn them back into quads. Might have reasons for that. And then finally, we've got the relax tool. This is exactly the same, I think, as the loop tool's relax, which is just there. I can't see any difference between it, and all it does is bring the points that you've got selected towards all of your other points. So pretty handy. So there we go, that was quite a quick intro to those different tools. I'll try and find some excuses to use them in projects in the future and maybe show some on the channel. But there are a lot of tools there, so me coming up with practical examples of all of them would have taken forever. But do let me know which of these tools you think is the most useful. As I said, I think my favourite are the offset edges. Maybe that's because I'm obsessed with pipes at the moment. And then the set edge length. But it'd be great if people would share some ideas in the comment section about how you might use some of these different tools. If you did find this video useful, a like would always be really appreciated, and if you do want to support the channel any further, there is a link in the description to the Patreon page where you get these videos a week ahead of time, ad-free, and access to the Patreon Discord, where we give each other advice on our projects or help solve people's problems when they're not sure on how to do certain functions in Blender. So do click on that if you're interested. Hope to see you in the next video, and have a great day.